Welcome to the latest episode of the NFL Cymru podcast. I believe this is episode 5, and we have reached the recap of Super Bowl 59 held last night in New Orleans, Louisiana, between the Kansas City Chiefs and, well, now I can say it, the Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. This is the post-mortem episode. We're going to be recapping, we're going to be dissecting really what went wrong for the Kansas City Chiefs and pretty much everything that went right for the Philadelphia Eagles. It was an absolute beatdown last night in the Superdome. The final score flattered the Chiefs a little bit in the end, 40 points to 22. The Chiefs scoring the majority of their points late in the fourth quarter in garbage time. I'm here once again with my co-host Guto Williams, and I'm so glad to tell you all that I've got a special guest with us tonight, joining us for the first time on the pod, the NFL Cymru podcast, is Ioan Furnham. Ioan, you're an Eagles fan. How does it feel waking up this morning and you're part of a Super Bowl winning franchise?
To be honest, it didn't feel real. Like the entire night, we couldn't believe what happened. To be completely honest with you, I didn't relax until the last 5 minutes. Obviously, sitting through 28 to 3 and obviously seeing every single Mahomes comeback he's ever put together in the playoffs. I didn't feel comfortable until the last 5 minutes, but as soon as that sort of hit and the reality sank in, I've just been on cloud nine ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they say, it's never over until it's over. And me being a Falcons fan, I know that very well. You know,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that famous 28 to 3 score. I was telling my mates when it was 27, I was like, lads, it's not over until it's over. So don't relax just yet. But yeah, a dominant victory for the Eagles last night.
Like I said, it was an absolute beatdown of the Chiefs. Turns out it was one of Patrick Mahomes' worst display in his glittering career so far. And I really hope that that isn't kind of like going to be a dent when we look back in 10, 15 years' time when he retires, because ultimately he's been to 5, he's won 3. And I know there's been a massive discussion today about, comparing him, who's the GOAT, is it Brady or Mahomes? And apparently now that notion that Mahomes can ever be the GOAT has been shattered after last night's performance. Like I said, it was a genius of a defensive breakdown by Philadelphia, especially. I have to say the unsung hero all of this is, I think, is Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator. Mention before this, Ioan. Apparently, Mahomes was 8-0 against Vic Fangio before last night, and I'm sure you can tell us more about how the D line, especially for the Eagles, they've been absolute beasts,
Yeah.
especially throughout the playoffs, especially, haven't they?
Yeah, it's just the level of play that we saw last night, especially from not just the best one of your Jalen Carters, your Jordan Davises, but your Jalen Hunts, your Josh Sweat, those people who tend to be put in more average shifts during the regular season, stepping up, being able to be that rotational player, and obviously with the morale boost with Brandon Graham returning after 2.5 months out with a tricep injury, it was just unbelievable. They hardly blitzed. It was four-man pressure every time, something they strayed away from. We tend to look for a three-man front with a back on the outside most of the season, but today we just stuck with the four-man game, and it was a beautiful watch. As a lineman, as an offensive lineman myself, I hated to see it, obviously, because Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, they had great seasons. Joe Tooney with the All Pro shout. But it was just a masterclass from a D line perspective, and it's the game plan. You have to get pressure in an elite quarterback's face to have any chance at keeping them off the field, and the Eagles did that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm not sure about you guys, but last night just reminded me, I had flashbacks of the 2021 Super Bowl, the Chiefs against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where the Chiefs O line, I know they were really, really banged up they were without 2 guards in that game, in that 2021 Super Bowl. And I know that wasn't true. I know Tooney had to swap from guard to tackle or tackle to guard. And they had a new tackle in as well. But still, like you said, Ioan, like they've been playing really well. They ultimately they got past the Bills a couple of weeks ago, but then they were coming up against just a completely different level of defense today. And like you said, I couldn't believe when I saw this stat as well. They were literally just running 4-man fronts throughout the whole game. And I don't think that Vic Fangio called a blitz throughout the whole game, which is like a really simple concept, like a traditional concept. And looking back now, we had Vic Fangio in Miami last year, only for 1 year, and he went just completely unappreciated because apparently he was seen as very, very hard to get along with, didn't get along with the players. The players couldn't buy into his scheme and things like that. But clearly, the Dolphins have to look at themselves because all of a sudden, I mean, they were a top 5 defense up to the last 2 games of the season. And to be honest with you, I think I said to get on the last pod, in the NFL, you either run a defense concept on Bill Belichick or Vic Fangio, and he finally came through. And I'm not sure. I don't know. I know Jalen Hurts was the favourite to get the MVP, but for me, it could have been anyone, like you said, on that D line. It could have been Sweat, it could have been Williams, it could have been any of those. I think they even doubled Jalen Carter to make way for other people as well. Yeah, it was just and to think as well, like the offense. Then they had so much freedom to do. They didn't have to do much. Look at Saquon Barkley. I think he had what 60 yards throughout the whole game. That just shows how comfortable they were, and the defense were just so suffering throughout, weren't they?
Yeah, I'd just like to give credit to the Kansas City defense because they themselves put in a very good performance against Saquon Barkley. Not many teams can hold him under 100, let alone under 70, 60 yards. So you've got to give them credit. They had a clear game plan from the outset, is that we need to stop Barkley if we want any shot of being able to not only be on the offensive side of the ball for a majority of the game, but also just making sure, well, keeping the score down, obviously. So you've got to give them credit, but at the end of the day, they forgot that they seem to have just forgotten that Jalen Hurts can pass. Like I know it's a very underrated part of his game, and he is criticised for it quite often. But not only that, and his pocket presence was ridiculous. You see him; he's got guys coming out his blind side. He's the inches close to getting sacked, and yet he can feel the pressure and knows where to step up. And it's clear that he studied like Spagnuolo's blitzes are not easy to read whatsoever. He's known for his blitzes and the twists that he throws at opposing O lines. And obviously, having the best O line in the league helps that with that. But the pocket awareness and the ability to throw on the run and just take what the defense gives you and not try and throw deep hero balls. It was just a masterclass.
Yeah.
Obviously bias is going to play into this, being an Eagles fan, but it's probably the best game, that all-round game I've seen from Hurts in his career, and that includes the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, you have to give credit to the Chiefs defense trying to stop Saquon Barkley. Like it wouldn't seem like he did much, but those little 10 yards when he actually did, it did make a difference in the end. But you have to give credit to the defense for stopping them. But AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, they had a much better game. They were the unsung heroes, I think. If it wasn't for them, it wouldn't be that much of a scoreline. Interestingly, on Saquon Barkley as well, he actually broke the record for the most rushing yards in a whole season, including playoffs. He went over 2,500 yards, which is more than anyone. The last person to have that record was Terrell Davis back in the 90s. So it shows Saquon Barkley. He's had an amazing season, and I can see him just getting better and better.
Yeah. I think that would probably go down as one of the best free agency acquisitions of all time. Let's be honest with you, and the fact that it was in a Division 1 as well, which rubs the salt into the wound even better. But Ioan, I just wanted to, how long have you been an Eagles fan, by the way?
I've been an Eagles fan since about the 2010-ish, since the Andy Reid days.
Yeah.
Sat through Chip Kelly, then obviously it's difficult because I want to say last night was the greatest night of my life, but I saw Nick Foles beat Tom Brady, so it's very difficult to place which one is which one is the favorite, because obviously the Philly special is, again, biased, the greatest play in Super Bowl history. Fight me on that. But yeah, I've been an Eagles fan for a long time, and it was great to see the doubt sort of melt away. Obviously, if you look back in earlier games, especially when they were playing the Packers and the Falcons, like people, it looked like the players weren't quite secure in the system. They were getting used to the complex Kellen Moore offense. But as soon as we started rolling, got the like more difficult, like grindier games in under our belt and started gaining momentum, it was clear that a switch had flicked, and we were just off from there.
Yeah, you went
Yeah,
10 in a row, I believe, didn't you? After the Falcons lost, I think. You went
Yeah,
10 games
uh,
win streak.
I will admit I was calling for Sirianni's job, just like Stephen A. Smith
Mm.
was, just like
Yeah.
everyone else was in
Mm.
the US media. I was not happy, and obviously that to be honest, I didn't fully turn around to him until at least in the middle of the season, when obviously when he shaved his head for but let's be honest, it was a publicity thing,
yeah.
and like he was trying to fight Cleveland Browns fans who we've just beaten by 7, while we're meant to be one of the best in the league, and they're obviously scrapping for the first round pick at that time. And I was just not I was not satisfied with the culture he was trying to set. But as it gained momentum, and he was able to back the talk that he was talking with the product on the field, it was just, so all right, maybe that was a bit of an overreaction, because I feel like that we do that in Philly all the time. If something goes wrong, we're very hot-headed. We don't think, we just assume that if something's going wrong, something has to change. We don't have a lot of patience, and I feel like that this season's a testament to that, to why you should be patient.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I just want to take you back, well, both of you really, especially you, Ioan, as an Eagles fan, to last year, where you started off 10-2, 10-3, and then there was that massive collapse towards the end of the
Yeah.
season. And then how much of this success story is on Howie Roseman? Because I'm just so impressed by what he's done in the off season. The fact that you've drafted so well, that you've got people like Cooper DeJean, who else? Quinion Mitchell.
Quinion.
You know, some of these are just absolute gems in the draft, and the acquisition of Barkley as well. He's just had bullseye after bullseye after bullseye, and it wasn't even kind of like he just looked at his tool shed and he said, right, I just need to tweak a few things here. And the fact that you knew you had a lot of talent on that defense. I know you lost Hassan Reddick and things like that, but like, how much is on, like I said, Howie Roseman running the team, and obviously getting rid of your coordinators towards the end of the season last year as well.
I think it's a testament to Howie's ability to listen to the people around him, because it's clear that he had a hand in hiring the new coordinators, picking ones that he thought he could fit their scheme around the players that we had even before we started signing free agency. And obviously, we can't say that Howie had the foresight that Zach Bourne was going to become an All-Pro. Like, he was a special teamer on New Orleans, and now he's an All-Pro. And unfortunately, he's going to come with a hefty price tag during free agency, which is going to hamper our efforts trying to re-sign all these amazing players. But his the ability to listen to the people around him, to work, and to just believe in what he sees, believe in what's put in front of him by the scouting staff. It's just, as much as I want to give him credit, and you should give him credit, I think it's just a massive collaborative effort that's all just sort of accumulate. Like, we talk about the Quinions, we talk about the Cooper DeJeans, but if you look at last night, especially Jalix Hunt getting 2 sacks, he's the third, fourth rounder. He's a great pickup, and I don't see a D lineman in the third and fourth round making that play. If it wasn't for Harry Roseman picking him up. So it's the fact that we can draft so deeply and yet retain all these players. Obviously, we said as soon as you get out the second or the third round, you're not quite sure if we're even going to see these players at the end. By the time the 53-man roster cuts come around.
Yeah.
So his ability to draft well in the later rounds is just, you don't see it anywhere else in the NFL. And I will stop singing his praise. I will stop singing his praises in a minute. But
No.
it's all to do with trusting the guys around him and the staff that he's built over the years. And like, if we look at the collapse last season, it was more than just the coordinators. There was a cultural problem. Hertz wasn't feeling confident in the system. We'd hired from the inside, which tends, unless you're Bill Belichick, tends to never go well. Matt Patricia was running the defense. Like, it was a recipe for disaster by the end of the time. And obviously, I don't think we would have felt it as hard if we hadn't had like legends like Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey leave. But the ability to bounce back and fix our secondary from the worst to the best in one draft class is unheard of. And you've got to all give that to Roseman.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about the defense already. Guto, I just want to switch over to the offense as well. Just looking at these last two games, the NFC Championship game and last night's Super Bowl, combined, the Eagles have scored 95 points in two games, which is absolutely ridiculous. You know, against a really, really good Commanders team that ultimately came up against the giants of the NFC, and then to put 40 points on it, like we've already said, a talented Chiefs defensive roster as well, a young roster. You've sung, you know, Devontae Smith and AJ Brown's praises already. Do you think kind of like us as neutrals underestimated them as an offensive power at all?
I think in yesterday's game, yes, I think they did underestimate. I don't think anybody expected them to dominate as they did, especially against the Chiefs. And even in a game against the Commanders in the NFC Championship, you know, you don't expect a big blowout like that. And yeah, in the last, like you mentioned, in the last two games, 95 points, that's crazy. I mean, some teams, it takes 3 or 4 games to get close to 90 points, like in total. They've done that in 2 games against 2 brilliant teams, and it's a credit to them. It's a credit to their DC and the rest of the staff as well, as Ioan mentioned. They did have that big challenge of replacing Jason Kelsey 2 seasons ago, and they've done that in quick and in stunning fashion as well. So I don't see them declining anytime soon as well. I think they can dominate the NFC for quite a few seasons.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, let's kind of like switch over to the Chiefs side if we can, just for a little moment, because I mean, the day after the Super Bowl is almost like a weird day anyway. It's kind of like you feel, us especially living in Wales, you've been up, you know, some of you since 6 until 6 in the morning. You feel really lethargic throughout the day. Some of you have done a really, really, really good job, by the way, as booking a day off work. I didn't do that, and I should have, but there we are. Just a strange kind of atmosphere. From what I could see and what I was hearing, the crowd in Louisiana last night was very, very dominant on the Eagle side. There was kind of like something was off with the voodoo with the Chiefs. You can see particularly during their first couple of drives. I know the Eagles didn't do much in their first drive either, but then kind of like to have that collapse. And I know that the Chiefs are without I'd say their number one receiver in Rashee Rice, that they suffered, you know, a big setback at the beginning of the season. But they had if you're asking me, a better crop of receivers than they had 2 years ago, and they still managed to put up 38 points. Was it just a tale of the defense was just completely suffocating them, and a combination of Mahomes potentially playing one of his worst games of the season, if not his career? Is something else that they could have done? I mean, is it too harsh to say that maybe the play calling is this a little bit on Andy Reid as well? That kind of he was just completely outdone by a better scheme.
Possibly so, yeah. There's a lot of things you can look at. I actually noticed when I think it was the first drive that the Chiefs had, and I think it was on 3rd down, where it was 3rd and 11, and Patrick Mahomes got tackled, and I thought he landed quite roughly. I think his head like bobbled a little bit. So maybe, you know, there's no noise about it. There's nothing being reported, but maybe that may have had something to do with it. But he looked very. I don't think he looked nervous, but he didn't look himself. He looked a bit flustered to me, actually, throughout the game. nothing was clicking for them, especially at the beginning. They had a couple of touchdowns afterwards, but even before halftime, when it was on third down, Hopkins, he was open and he should have made the catch, even when he dropped on the floor and the ball, he didn't catch it. That's an easy catch for him. So maybe Andy Reid, there was videos of Andy Reid going around Frenchman Street the night before the game when probably he shouldn't have. I'm not sure. People were going up to him. So it could be quite a few things to look at, definitely. But something wasn't quite right with the Chiefs yesterday.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
no,
was
go
just
for
gonna say, like, I'd argue it's sort of a culmination of what is a very down year for the Chiefs standards. Because if you think about it, the compared to the Super Bowl last year, you've got Kelsey, who's had one Kelsey standard game all season. Patrick himself has not performed to his highest expectation. The receivers in Kansas City have never been great. They've never been the most elite players, especially after Tyreek Hill left. And I feel like the supporting cast, that in culmination of the amount of luck also that they've needed, the blocked field goals to win games, some questionable calls just to get to the Super Bowl in the first place. I think it was a culmination of just the luck, maybe the luck running out,
yeah.
as superstitious as that sounds. But I think it's reflective of what the season's been, because as much as we wanted to call them a worse version of what they were previously, they were still 15-1. We had no tangible reason to call to say that they've regressed. But I think that just culminated massively in the Super Bowl on the biggest stage. And when they were put up against a defense like Philadelphia's, where they will expose you for even the tiniest mistakes. I feel like it was just it will be interesting to see what they do in free agency if they want to try, if they like. This may be a crazy thing to say, but start moving on from people like Travis Kelce, trying to look for your new X factor, because it's quite clear that supporting cast around Mahomes couldn't get it done. I mean, you look at Xavier Worthy's performance. Yes, he did have 150 yards at the end of the day, but obviously, as you said, he came in garbage time. So I feel like if they want to stay as this juggernaut, unbeatable, immortal power, I feel like they're going to have to do a lot of work on the offseason and really assess the situation. And like, we don't even know if Rashid Rice is going to return with all the personal problems off the field as well. So it's going to be very interesting to keep up and watch what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you mentioned. Oh, pardon me. Just a quick one for me. Just as Ioan mentioned, obviously with Travis Kelce, obviously he turns up in the playoffs games, but he didn't really turn up yesterday. Do you guys think he's played his last game?
No, personally, I think he'll come back. To be honest with you, if I was Travis Kelce, I wouldn't want my career to finish off like that, on a sour note like that.
Sure.
I know you've got 3 rings, but I think he'd potentially use that motivation to come back next year. Maybe on a reduced salary, maybe that's not even possible. But like I said, do you know what? Coming back to just the supporting cast in Kansas City, that's my argument to say that Mahomes is the GOAT, because look at what he's been dealing with over the last 3 to 4 years post Tyreek Hill. He's been throwing to MVS, Juju Smith-Schuster, people like this, Sky Moore. Who else he's been into, like Kadarius Toney, and he's still been able to put his team on the back. But unfortunately, he came up last night against a team that completely wouldn't let him do that at all. They didn't even give him a sniff. So I think you're right. I think they're going to have to move on from a few players. I think Worthy will get better in his second season. That's a really good point in terms of what's going to happen with Rashid Rice. Is he going to be suspended by the NFL? That's we'll have to wait and see about that, because he's definitely, he would be their number one receiver if he would come back. They're gonna have to try and transition away from Kelce at some point, and maybe they're gonna have to clean up their O line as well. There's talk of maybe Trey Smith is kind of going to leave in free agency. I don't know how long Tooney has got left as well. There's a lot of different ways that they can do, but that's another thing. The Eagles are one of the best drafting teams in the NFL, and so are the Chiefs as well. I mean, look at their defense. They've got people like McDuffie that have been drafted. Leo Chanot is another one. They're line back. Nick Bolton. They are one of these franchises who are just fantastic when it comes to drafting young players. They're going to have to kind of do that the same thing on the offensive side of the ball, like they've done in the last couple of years. And who knows? Like we have seen, I completely agree that this has been a massive down year for the Chiefs. And you never know who's going to be the surprise of the AFC coming up. You never know what's going to happen in their division. The Broncos, the Chargers are definitely going to get better, especially with it under their management. Who knows what's going to happen with the Bengals? I'd love to say that the Dolphins are going to challenge, but they're probably not. But you're still gonna have your Baltimores. You're still gonna have your Bills. I think the Bills are, if they can get a number one wide receiver, they can be very, very dangerous because they're a very, very well coached team, and behind Josh Allen and things like that, and they've got a decent defense as well. So yeah, it's gonna be really tough for the Chiefs to get back to the dance over the next couple of years as well. So yeah, we talked about kind of like where do they go from here, and I can't imagine what Chiefs fans are, and it's probably worse for them as well because they were ultimately going for that three-peat, and I guess the Eagles now can have a new nickname. They've done this twice now. They've stopped the Patriots and the Chiefs from doing the three-peat, so
Yeah.
I guess they're the three-peat slayers now, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting one that it's with the Eagles doing it for the Patriots before. It's yeah, but they've obviously had the team to do it and the defense to do it, and obviously they've used special plays in those games as well. And like I said at the beginning, I don't see them downgrading or anything anytime soon. I think they can dominate for a few years. Maybe in the next few years, we'll be talking about the Eagles doing the three-peat.
Yeah. The only thing that I say, sorry, just before you come in, the only thing that I was going to throw at you actually is we're hearing that Kellen Moore is potentially going to take the head coaching job at the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to affect anything? I know you've said before that maybe there's a chatter out there that you're going to trade AJ Brown, but like you said, I probably trust the Eagles to draft someone or to bring someone in free agency. Do you think they'll do you think they'll go in-house for the OC job or they'll kind of go someone from the outside?
I think we've learned our lesson when it comes to hiring from the inside because of the disaster that was last season with Sean Desai and others. I can't even remember his name, unfortunately. But I have no idea who would take over. But it's clear that if you have the talent, the job, that success will come with it. We have a loaded roster. We have every piece. We are the ideal job for a new up and coming offensive coordinator. And obviously, with Moore leaving us, it's very sad because I like his offense a lot. As an offensive lineman, watching his run schemes, what he does with Saquon, and how he utilizes that elite offensive line in the run game, he's gonna be sorely missed. I feel like with the Chiefs when it comes to free agency, they've missed a trick, but especially with Pacheco having the down year is because the running back market, after seeing what Saquon's done, the teams are going to try and emulate that, and that's not only applying to. This is lucky because we signed Saquon on a longer term deal, but can you imagine if we gave him a prove it deal and then we have to re-sign him the next year? Like the running back market has been so undervalued, and with contracts expiring soon, the price to get a good running game is going to increase massively. So if you're looking for a quick fix or a safety valve, of a half decent safety valve, I feel like that's going to come at a lot higher price this year. But back to Kellen Moore point, I think you have to hire from the outside, but you have to balance that with having someone who can fit in the culture. Because if you're going to have someone that's not going to be able to work with the established staff, they're now a Super Bowl winning head coach, the Super Bowl winning defensive coordinators and assistants, Stoutland, that has been there forever and is a stalwart and is probably the most respected coach in that organization. It's just, you have to, if they do it well and they do it carefully, I believe anyone can succeed. But if you hire from the inside and just try and emulate and become a sort of bargain version of what Kellen Moore does, I feel like that would be a disservice to a very talented roster.
Guys, I could literally talk with you for hours about this. Thank you so much for your contribution. That is going to be the end of the post-match Super Bowl 59 recap. Thank you once again to Guto Williams and to Ioan Furnham for your thoughts as well. And once again, massive congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles, well deserved. And like I said, I think they're going to be a problem in the NFC for many years to come. We're going to be back, by the way, later on. We're going to have a few pods this week covering more around the Super Bowl. We are going to have a Chiefs kind of point of view later on in the week, and we also have a few other things, breaking news to touch up on. Aaron Rodgers is leaving the Jets. Deebo Samuel is looking to move away from the 49ers, and we haven't actually had a time to talk about Louis Rees-Zammit and his future within the NFL. Apparently, he might be going to a new team because the Jacksonville Jaguars haven't actually given him a contract to stay in Florida. So that's going to be interesting to see in the next couple of weeks, or next couple of days rather, where he's going to land for the 2025 season. But for now, Ioan, Guto, thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for listening, and give us a thumbs up on YouTube and Instagram. You've been listening to the NFL Cymru podcast. We'll see you very shortly. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr.